Hello, I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome to Bouncing Back. Coping with the death of a loved one is a heartache that no one can heal. A loss of a loved one is a life-changing event, one that does not come with a roadmap. There is not a right or wrong way for someone to cope with their grief and go through the healing process. Today, we will hear a story from someone whose life was turned upside down from the sudden loss of her father, and she's actually still working her way through her grief, and at the same time, finding a way to help others as well. Let's get started. Hello, I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome to Bouncing Back.
God makes a way.
Be honest and communicate.
Be your authentic self. That's so critical. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Bouncing Back. Let's welcome Gianna Medidio. Today we have Gianna, a 29-year-old resident, Center City, whose father suffered a sudden heart attack just over a year ago, and he died at the age of 63. The unexpected submersion into grief forced her to evaluate her life, what happened, and grief as a whole. In the following months, her father's death, she realized there was the need for a greater understanding of loss for everyone. She has taken to social media to spread the message, and she started a website and a blog called So Sorry for Your Loss, where she hopes that by sharing her stories and others, we can build a stronger community that is ready to take on loss. Well, first of all, I'm so happy to have you because I love you dearly.
Thank you for having me.
And I have kind of experienced the loss with you a little bit because I met you, I think, on a professional level just before you had your
a few
father,
months before,
a few months before, and I remember I was like, wait, where did she go?
Yeah.
Right? So we can start with your life with your dad, and maybe, tell us a little bit about your relationship.
Sure, and that's a good place to start because the relationship that we had is something that really plays into my grieving process and why it was so difficult. I'm very open about this. I've gone to therapy, and my therapist has made it clear that grieving a difficult relationship with anybody is always more challenging because of the questions that you're left with or the what ifs and those types of things. So my father was such a huge person in my life, but we did have a difficult time kind of getting to a balanced relationship with each other. He wasn't always accessible. He was, I didn't have as much of his time as I wanted. And I know that a lot of people felt that about him. I know that he was juggling a lot at one time, but it was like when I was there with him, I've never felt so loved, and he was so affectionate and so funny. I know I have so much of his personality that my family still to this day will be like, oh my God, she's her father. And I'm so happy to hear that now, but it was difficult. And then when all of this happened, everybody can say to me, like, don't worry about it, it wasn't your fault, there's nothing that you could do, but it's very hard for me not to feel I couldn't save him. Or what if I would have done something different in our relationship? Would that have affected the outcome? And logically, I know that's not the case. But
so when you say, just want to make sure we're clear and we're talking about the same thing. So when you say you couldn't save him, you mean in the terms of why weren't you there to help him?
Yeah.
During the process?
So there was, so to be more specific about the story, there was a couple days where I hadn't spoken to him. The last time I did talk to him was on Mother's Day. I had called him and said, I can't get a hold of my mom, are you with her? And he said, oh no, I'll call her when I'm with you, or when I'm with her. And then he never did call me back. And then it was Wednesday morning when I had got the call that he had the heart attack. So, in my head, I'm like, why did I let the rest of Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday go by? I should have called. I should have checked in. Was he not feeling well? Could I have taken him to the hospital sooner?
But do you think that's normal? I lost my aunt, and I remember saying goodbye to her. The last time I said goodbye to her when she was coherent and awake, and I was going down the steps and she was sitting on a couch, and I said, I love you, but why didn't I go over and give her a kiss goodbye and tell her that I loved her in her face? Do you know what I mean?
And now that's something that haunts me for everyone around here. even if I'm in the biggest rush, like I'm gonna give you a huge hug before I leave today, because that will haunt me. Like, what if something happens and I know that I just didn't take that 3 seconds to do it, because that is something that I think about with my dad a lot.
They say loss and loss of a loved one is really life-changing, and it really is. And until you really go through it, there's like no words. It's like I'm a mom, and I remember when I was pregnant, and people would say to me, "You have no idea what you're about to enter into," and I was like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah, but in good ways and bad. I remember a lot of people came up to me at the funeral and were just like, "This is grief. Like, this is what happens, and it's going to feel like this for the rest of your life."
Wait a second.
Yeah, and
People came up to you at the funeral and said, "This is how you're going to feel for the rest of your life."
Yeah, like you're always going to miss him. And I really took that to heart and really felt like I was never going to feel better than the way that I did on that day. So for me, I guess I started off thinking it was really terrible, and then any part that I grew from there was kind of a bonus. So I'm really happy that I'm at the place of my life that I am today, because I was very confident that I was going to be completely down and depressed forever.
So I guess it raised an interesting point is when you're at the funeral, and I think when you do a show about loss, of course we want to talk about your feelings respectfully and have compassion, but I think it's interesting as a society how we don't know what to say.
Right.
So I'm still kind of like a little befuddled, like, really somebody came up to you at your dad's funeral and told you this is how it's going to be forever? Who says that?
Right. Right.
Who does that?
I know. I was very surprised by the whole experience. Is something you feel like you're in the twilight zone. You feel like you're in a hurricane, but there's some of it that I don't remember at all. The memory has a nice way of trying to take care of you and trying to make sure you don't remember some things. But there are some things that I do remember, like people that I thought would be there and they weren't. People that came out of the woodwork that maybe I hadn't spoken to them for years, but sent flowers, called, made sure I was okay. There's just a lot of surprising things that can happen. But specifically with my blog, So Sorry for Your Loss, the reason I named it that is kind of like this play of that's not all that you can say. There's more. There's more to learn about grief and this whole experience. And specifically making it a more statement that's targeted to the person. So I'm sorry that you're going through this. I'm sorry that you're feeling this way. Bringing up memories of the person is very helpful. That's what I love the most, hearing what my dad meant to other people. I had people that said to me, I only met your dad twice, but he made me feel like he was my best friend every time I saw him. And that's why I'm here today, because I couldn't not say goodbye. And it was the things like that were just so incredible to hear. And because I had the difficult relationship with him for some of my life, it meant more to be able to learn more about him.
So you actually, during his death, like in his passing, that you actually learned, and it's funny you say that because you learn more probably about him and yourself as well, right? So there's probably a little piece of you that's like, that's kind of every time you bump into somebody that knew him, or they do say that when through darkness comes lots of light, right? And
there has been. I mean, there are so many things that have gone on in our family that I can say there is a lot of light that has come from this dark situation. I'm closer with family members than I ever have been. We had no choice but to bond together through such a shocking, sudden event. You don't really have the time.
So it was pretty shocking, right?
Yeah. That Sunday he was out with my grandmother, took her out for Mother's Day, and I think he started to feel a little sick, but didn't really know what was wrong. And I
hear that a lot, unfortunately.
It's really scary.
It's scary.
Yeah. The number one thing that people always ask me, well, was he sick? Did he smoke? Was he overweight? The things
that love the questions people ask.
Right.
Tell me, what did he do? What?
Because people are trying to qualify that it's not something that can happen to them.
Oh,
interesting. So they want to hear all these things about him, and I'm like, no, he.
But he wasn't feeling well, and I will say that I do hear often. And I lost a colleague 2 years ago who, same thing. It was all day. He was, I don't know if your father was, but for this gentleman, he was complaining all day that he felt like he had indigestion.
Yeah.
And we kept saying, go to the emergency room, and he didn't. And he literally passed out at our office and died that day. So
Yeah.
I think that it is important
Of
to stop
course.
and just say that if you're not feeling well,
Yeah.
you might want to go.
And Surgeon General's note, I will say,
we want to go.
my father was a stubborn Italian man, so he'd probably.
There was no getting him to the doctor anyway, right?
Correct. So, was it sudden? Absolutely. But, could it have been prevented through him making some better choices? I think so. But that's the type of thing. Why didn't you want to make those choices? Why didn't you want to go to the doctor? Why wasn't I enough for you to be here?
Okay, so I was going to say, so when you say that's a type of thing, these are questions that you're asking, that you're struggling with after his passing. Are you still struggling with those? Are you still?
That's a good question. I'd say a majority of them.
Well, because I think as human beings we struggle,
Yeah.
and I don't think the struggles really go away.
And I don't know that I've gotten perfect answers to them, but I think I've gotten answers that make me feel comfortable enough to move on. There are still some that.
So when you say move on, you mean move on? You're
Just
not
from
moving
whatever
on.
that issue is, from whatever
from the
that.
issue.
Yeah, so if it's something stupid like why didn't he do X, and I can just say to myself, well, I think because maybe this. And, I would prefer his answer to that than mine, but I've come up with an answer that, based on my research and talking with my family and talking with my friends and really evaluating pieces of his life that I didn't necessarily know about when he was alive, but have now become available to me after his death, I've gotten answers.
We're going to take one quick break. I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you. And then we're going to come back and talk about your answers. And we'll continue our conversation about bouncing back from loss when we come right back. Welcome back. We're talking about bouncing back from loss. So we were talking about the shock and awe of your father passing, and we were talking a little bit about the unanswered questions, right? We all have them. When anybody who's watching our show right now, everyone has lost a loved one at one point or another. Some are probably luckier than others if they haven't lost a close, not everyone is super close to you, but you lost your dad, that's pretty life altering. So you're left with this shock, and then you have to get through the funeral, all that, and that's like a daze probably, right? Now you have to come back to life. Now you have to bounce back. You have to come back, and you have to put a smile on your face, right? I mean, let's face it. This is how our world works today. Your father died. Okay, take as much time as you need, but what we really mean is maybe take a week and hurry back, right?
Right.
I mean, you don't get grieving time, you get PTO time, and if you're out of PTO time, what do you do,
Well,
right?
I will say I was very fortunate. I worked for an organization that completely understood what I was going through and did give me that time. So I took a couple months off. But being the main person for the estate for my dad and something that was sudden, there was a lot of legal work that had to be done. I had a 94-year-old grandmother that was still here at the time that
Wait, his mother?
His mother. So I felt like she became my daughter. I became so protective of her. I wanted to make sure she was okay. There were a lot of times I put my own grieving to the side because I was so concerned about her. So there was a lot in that initial time period when it, right after the funeral. One of the things I can look at now and say I know that I was wrong and I should have done differently is I didn't think about myself enough. I was so worried about everyone around me, and I that's the type of person I am. I need to make sure everybody's okay, and I spent so much time doing that I was running myself to the ground. So it's really difficult to answer a lot of the questions when you're in this grieving phase. And I remember sitting in meetings with lawyers, barely even being able to open my eyes. And they're asking me questions about my father's work and his car and his house. And I can't even tell you what day it is, let alone, information about his life. And then some of it made me realize how close our relationship was, but how distant our relationship was. Some of it that I didn't know. Or family members or friends were saying, oh yeah, well your dad had this. I'm like, he did?
I didn't know about that.
So it was,
So it's really mixed.
There are so many emotions that go through someone's head at the time. And it's interesting that you brought that up about the PTO, because I think that's something that really should be looked at with a lot of organizations around the world, and something that should be taken more seriously. We talk about mental health and how that should be something that is valued in this society, and one way to start with that is right there with a bereavement period.
Oh, I am all for us reevaluating how we, not even just how we handle it at the workplace, but how we talk to each other and what we say to each other.
Absolutely.
Because,
Absolutely.
you know, here you're in the throes of, you know, going to lawyers, like you said, and all this, and you're not taking care of yourself. And I guarantee you had a lot of people telling you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Gianna, you need to rest. Gianna, you need to eat. And you're like, no, I don't want to eat, right? How many times do people tell you what you should do, right? And how you should be feeling. And that word should, I just want to take that word should and like put it in, you know, in the trash, and we should never use it again.
Yeah, I mean, there was part of me that like retreated back to this infant stage. You know, it was during the day I was powerhousing through all these responsibilities, and then when it would just be me in quiet time at night, I don't want to eat, I don't want to sleep, I don't want to do this. And it was like my mom and my fiance were trying to help me. And I remember there was one specific time where we were in the kitchen and I went to grab a knife to cut a tomato. And my fiance was like, well, be careful with that. And I was like, I know how to use a knife, you know? And he's like, well, I have to remind you to eat, you know? Like I
have to remind you to eat, so now don't tell me you know how to cut a tomato.
Right, you know, and that was kind of this wake up moment of like, oh my gosh, they have to watch everything I do because I'm not demonstrating the simplest of things.
Okay, so you have the shock and awe, right? Now you're powerhouse. I mean, you are a powerhouse anyway, but you're a powerhouse during the day, and you're taking care of your grandmother. You know, your mom is supporting you. At what point do you take care of yourself? Like, what is it you woke up, you know, because I think there's always times in your life where you like look in the mirror and you're like, oh, I do not look good today at all. I better get it together. Or, and this is what I do. I don't know if you did this a lot with things. I always say, I want to not be in this frame of mind. Like, did you recognize that you were in that infancy stage, or was that the moment you were like, wow?
Yeah, no, it took a long time. And I'm better at it now, but it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to understand yourself a little bit better.
I love that because we always talk about this show and all the other shows we talk about, always about knowing yourself, the importance of knowing yourself and really understanding what you need, right? So you know what you needed, right?
Right. But you become a completely different person. And that's what's hard to recognize. I think it took me a little bit of time to understand I'm not the person that I was before. And the things that made me tick and the things that made me healthy and the things that made me happy are not applicable to me anymore. Wow. So you really had to find out what could fill the void of, you know, what you used to use before. So very similar to another guest you had on your show, saying, you know, evaluating your group of friends, evaluating the people you surround yourself with. Are they going to make you happy? Are they going to make you feel comfortable? You know, certain activities that you could do to make yourself better and busy, you know, working out is good just to get your mind off of something, to feel like you can put your energy into something else at the moment.
Going to the gym is, for me, it's not even about weight loss. Like it's just about getting
mind.
there.
Yeah,
it's a mind thing. It's like once you really start to sweat, because I used to go to the gym and walk out and be like, I don't know, I'm not sweating.
Yeah.
Once you really start to sweat, then you're like, wow, the endorphins, I guess, really make you feel a little bit better, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's so interesting that you said you're not the same person that you were.
Mm-mm. But I think a lot of it can be for the better.
No, I think it's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought you were pretty terrific.
Thank you.
Before. So tell us what else, you have any other advice for somebody who's maybe mourning the loss
Absolutely.
of somebody?
So there are a few quick things that I always suggest that people do, and we kind of just touched on this now, but one of them is be selfish. You know, take care of yourself. Really think about what you need. There were a lot of events that I was pushing myself to go to, and the power of saying no is so fantastic. And I had to remind myself that it was okay
Say that again.
to do that. You have to say no.
Say
the power
it really loud.
of saying
You have
no.
to say no. There is power. There is power in saying no. And I have said that a million times, and I actually had to teach myself how to say no.
Yeah.
You're younger than me, but when I was probably in my early 40s, late 30s, I really had to learn to say no. A friend of mine looked at me and she goes, you know that no's like a complete sentence. You don't have to say yes all the time. So, and it's, but you said, practice being selfish, is saying no being selfish, or is saying no just being true to what you want?
Either. You know, it can fit either situation. Yeah, definitely.
So go to the gym, be selfish. What else you got?
So you're going to have a ton of questions. Ask those questions. Ask anyone you know. Ask, how do I do this? Can you help me with this? But also about your loved one. You know, what did they think about this? He never told me a story about this. It just asking so many questions for any different type of, you know, topic towards the person's life can really help you learn more about them, learn more about what you need to do, and help you move on. Another thing I like to tell people is to write for a ton of reasons. Obviously, just to be able to get your emotions out, but also I like to be able to go back and reference what I wrote in earlier times so that I can see how I've moved on. I can look at a writing and say, wow, that was really deep and profound, and I was really feeling it so intensely that day. And I don't feel like that today. So I'm doing okay. And then another thing I like to say is to take the time. Take all the time that you need. This is going to be a lifelong journey, but not one that has to be terrible.
Say that again, because, you know, I like to repeat things.
Yeah.
I think it's important to repeat things so the people that hear them and absorb it, because especially for me, I need to hear it twice, maybe 3 times.
Yeah, it's important for people to take the time to be gentle with themselves. This is not something that has a deadline, that has a specific time that you should be over it or feeling better. It is all tailored on the person, and you should be easy with yourself and take whatever time you need to get through it.
That whole over it thing drives me nuts. Oh my God, how many times people say things to you like, you really should be over it at this point. Like, I don't really know why. Are you still?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
I know.
How am I over it? So let's talk about some tips. I know that you're writing your blog, and it's really helpful. Are people, you know, are writing out to you as well?
I have been so surprised with the amount of people that have reached out. It has been so touching. I did not expect this at all, but the amount of people that are just confirming that this is something that they need, that they want to see this type of writing. They need to feel like they're not the only one going through this. The amount of people that have said, I need to help a friend and I don't know what to do, and
That's so incredible. Like, I need to help a friend. I don't know what to do, because we don't know what to do when we're faced with loss.
Our society, doesn't like to talk about it. So
we got to start talking more.
Yeah.
That's why shows like this are so great.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
This is a great way to give people advice for how to deal with loss.
Yep.
So what do you say? You know, you gave us some tips, you know, write.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself.
So share your memories about the person, encourage them to keep talking about their loved one, encourage them to talk to their loved one. You know, a lot of people are spiritual and believe in that, and that could be very helpful. But just to keep that person's memory alive in any way that they can.
I find you to be an extraordinary, amazing person in the fact that
I think the same about you. So thank you.
It's a love fest. But no, in all seriousness, though, I mean, it speaks volumes to the type of person that you are, and the fact that here you are, you lost your father, struggling with all this, and then you managed to help others all at the same time. So thank you, thank you, thank you. My thanks to our guest, Gianna, for sharing her experience and her insights today. Wow. Whenever you experience a loss, it certainly changes the course of your life. And dealing with loss is not a standard one-size-fits-all. Response and reactions will differ. The loss is a healing process. And today's show was certainly a reminder that we need to allow ourselves time to grieve and go through the process our own way. The memories we share become our lifelong keepsakes. Hold on to those special memories and keep talking about that person that you miss. The more you talk about them, the more their memory stays alive. I will leave you with this reminder today. Hug and kiss and tell the people that are near and dear to your heart that you love them. Never miss an opportunity, because life is so fragile. And seriously, tomorrow is just not guaranteed. Once again, I'm Lisa Bien, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Bouncing Back. Hello, I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome to Bouncing Back.
God makes a way.
Be honest and communicate.
Be your authentic self. That's so critical.